With all of my videos, I try looking at the facts and statistics and the tournament results to come to a subjective opinion based on objectivity. I mention that because while I was editing this video that you'll see in like 30 seconds or so here, I realized I didn't say at the beginning of this video this is going to be a little bit different. So I'm putting this at the beginning just as an editor's note. This entire video is based on my opinions and my opinions alone. It's based on my experience as a Duel Links player and streamer over the past 8 months. It's not as analytical as maybe you're used to hearing on this channel, but these are all my honest opinions on the game right now. So even if you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine, but try not to hate me too much because these are all things that I experience. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way before the video started. Enjoy the rest of the discussion. I already know that this type of video is going to be confusing to some viewers. Many people don't even realize that I play Duel Links anymore. You know, a couple of years ago, I put out a huge video. It's one of my biggest videos back in the day that said I'm quitting Duel Links, and then I made like another follow-up video about why I'm still quitting Duel Links. So a lot of people out there that don't watch my live streams don't even really know that I have been playing Duel Links for like 7 or 8 months now, and yet, yeah, that's mostly what I live stream on this channel. There isn't really a great online Yu-Gi-Oh platform. I mean, you have Yu-Gi-Oh Pro, but it doesn't really have a ranked mode. You have Dueling Book, which has ranked mode, which is really cool, but then you have to deal with like rulings, and it takes really long to duel people on that. But overall, I play Duel Links on streams mostly, and during certain months, I've posted a lot of Duel Links content to this channel, but a lot of you guys have realized that I've sort of been dialing back on the Duel Links content, and that's for a few reasons. First off, those videos tend to not do as well as the other content, but more so, Duel Links just isn't that fun for me anymore, and in today's video I want to talk about that a little bit more. I don't know if I would say that I'm quitting the game again. I think that's a little bit sort of outlandish to say, only because, like I said, there's not really any good games to stream if I want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, maybe I can stream Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, but even that isn't as interesting as streaming Duel Links. Without a ranked mode, there's just nothing on the line. It's not as interesting, so I think I'll probably still stream Duel Links occasionally going forward, but as you guys have realized if you've been paying attention to the live streams, I mean, I've been doing them a lot less frequently. I mean, in February, I think I did like 4 live streams, where in previous months, I've done live streams like 5 times a week. Now I was going back to just doing once a week, and actually in February, it was the first season since starting Duel Links, all those months ago, like way back in August. It's the first season that I didn't hit King of Games, and it's because I barely played. I think I played ranked mode for like 6 total hours. I did those 4 streams, but one of those was in the KC Cup, which I only played for like a couple hours. So overall, instead of playing like the 10 to 15 hours that I normally would play, or even more in some months, I only played for a couple hours, a couple streams, and it just wasn't fun. And it wasn't fun to watch, it wasn't fun for me to play, and that's kind of where I am right now. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Duel Links is fun when it works well. I mean, there was a stream a couple nights ago that we did where I won like, I think I went like 15-2, and I was at the top of my game. I was having a lot of fun. And then the streams like last night that I'm sure some of you were around for, and I mean, it was just terrible. Like, I wasn't having fun. I was like, I think one of the issues with Duel Links right now that I've talked about in the past is that it feels like the opposite of the TCG, where you want to lose the coin toss. You want to go second. There's so many decks out there that if they go second, they can just kill you instantly. Things like Kawaki Miru and Ancient Gears, and even things like Vampires in the mirror match. You really want to lose the die roll, and that's kind of a weird situation. And I think one of the issues with this, and I mean, Hearthstone does this as well, but it doesn't seem to be as big of an issue, because in Hearthstone you kind of want to go first, and even going second isn't that bad. But in Duel Links, one of the issues is that you don't get to choose if you go first or second if you win the coin toss. This creates a very difficult situation for players like me, because when I win the die roll, a lot of the times that's basically just automatically losing the game. I can certainly spend the time to tech out my deck for going first, and even when I play, I'm playing Simultaneous Loss and Vampires, so at least I have some sort of defense when I go first. But a lot of times it just doesn't matter. When you win the die roll, win the coin toss, whatever, you a lot of times are just accepting that you're losing that game if your opponent is playing an OTK based strategy. Of course, this is the problem with any sort of single game game part of Yu-Gi-Oh! When you think of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, when you think of a lot of card games, they're meant to be played best 2 out of 3, and obviously I understand why Duel Links doesn't work that way, but it definitely is frustrating from a player perspective, especially someone that mostly plays the TCG, to transition from the TCG where the die roll matters, but at least you get games 2 and 3 if you lose the die roll and lose game 1, whereas in Duel Links, when you win the coin toss, it seems like you just don't get a chance to recover. Your opponent just kills you on their first turn. And that's sort of another issue with Duel Links, is the balancing act of stall decks and OTK decks. Now, I've talked about this on live stream a little bit, but basically what I'm talking about is that any sort of advancements made to sort of hurt stall decks end up helping OTK decks and vice versa. So, for example, there was a time when to combat OTK decks, Konami put the life points to 5,000, and I wasn't playing during that time. That was right before I got into the game, but a lot of people said that helped the OTK decks not be as crazy. But the problem is that because players had 5,000 life points, it helped decks that were stalling out for the win, because now it was a little bit harder, 1,000 life points harder to actually kill them. And that's sort of this balance that Konami can't really get out of. There are problems with OTK decks and problems with stall decks. I think they both have issues that are worth addressing. In the case of OTK decks, it feels like a lot of times it's just out of your control, right? That's the problem with them, is that you win the coin toss, quote unquote win the coin toss, and then you instantly lose the game because they just kill you. They summon a bunch of Ancient Gear monsters, summon a bunch of Kawaki Miru monsters, something along those lines. Or you play against stall decks, and it's not that you can't do anything in terms of, I mean, you at least get turns to deal with them, but a lot of the times it doesn't matter because they have 9 total copies of Kuribo, because they have Kuribo and they have Wing Kuribo and then they have Flutus Summon Kuribo, all these different ways to just sort of stall out, and that's not very fun to play against. I can't even imagine that would be fun to play in the first place. And then you have decks like the Buster Blader deck that tries to stall out and then just OTK you, even if you're not using Last Gamble. The Buster Blader deck is just like the absolute form of degeneracy in this game. I think it's very reminiscent of the Cyberstein or OTK back when Life Cost 0 was in the game, in that both decks are very inconsistent. Both decks aren't top tier. I mean, Buster Blader is a little bit better than Cyberstein, but overall both decks have a ton of consistency issues. They don't get their combo off very often, but in both cases, when they got their combo off, you lose every time. There's nothing you can do. In the case of Cyberstein, they would just OTK you, they would summon Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon and stuff like that. In the case of Buster Blader, sometimes, I mean, I would actually say more often than not, they don't actually OTK you the turn they summon the big fusion monster, but you can't do anything. You can't activate any monster effects because they're all negated because they have the DNA surgery, and even if you break that board, they can just add the fusion back to the hand, and it really creates a situation where you have this deck in the game that's not fun to play against, and when it goes off is almost unbeatable. And yet when I'm complaining about Buster Blader, I'm asking myself, well, aren't there just a ton of decks like that? Isn't it like in the case of every deck out there where once it gets going, it's just unbeatable unless you draw the perfect combination of cards to deal with it? And that's sort of the issue with Duel Links right now, or at least some of the issues with the game. I mean, from my perspective, it's not fun when you're not in control of your games. And some people may disagree with me here, especially players that only play Duel Links and don't play the TCG, but one of the issues and one of the reasons that Duel Links feels so out of my control when I'm personally playing is that many of the decks, almost all the decks, are extremely linear in what they do. Now, obviously, I'm biased here because I play the deck, but I think that Vampires, and I've said this time and time again, even before I played the deck, it's the deck in the game that feels closest to a TCG deck. The reason being is that you have lots of decisions to make every single turn. You can play aggressively, you can play defensively, you can take risks, you can do all these sort of things. You have access to almost every card in your deck for a variety of situations. You have removal, you have defense. There's all these different aspects of Vampires that give you options throughout the duel and make sure that the better Vampire players will usually win in like the mirror matches and usually outplay their opponents. But many of the decks besides Vampires don't feel that way because there's simply not enough searching power, and if there is searching power, there's not enough like valid targets in a lot of the other decks. Think of Kawaki Mirrors, for example. When you activate Diamond Core, it might seem very similar to the Vampire cards, but it's actually not, because it's pretty much just, do you have Urnite or do you have Iron Core? If not, add the other one to your hand. If you have both those cards, add Maximus to your hand and kill your opponent. That really isn't a lot of meaningful decision making. It's just sort of checking off the boxes. You're not playing around your opponent's cards, you're simply just checking the boxes and saying, well, do I have this in my hand? hand? Okay, I'm going to add this other card. Do I have that other card in my hand? Okay, I'm going to add this other card. That's not really meaningful decision making, and it makes playing the deck not very interesting. That's why I haven't really been able to play that deck, despite the fact that I have all the cards for it. It's just not fun to play because I don't feel like I'm making an impact. I feel like anyone could play my exact build and do the same amount of damage and win the same amount of games as me because the deck's playstyle is so linear. But that's the case with a lot of the decks. Ancient Gears, yes, you have Wyverns searching different cards, but it doesn't really matter, right? It's the same exact thing as Kawaki-Mirus. Do you already have the boss monster? Okay, add the spell card. You already have the spell card? Okay, add the boss monster. That's not really interesting from a mechanical standpoint as someone that's playing the game. It feels like the decks are playing themselves, and I know that this is just going to sound like whining. I'm sure that people that only play Duel Links or people that left the TCG are going to say, well, the TCG is just like that as well, but it's not. There's so much more decision making, there's so much more control from a TCG perspective than Duel Links, and this is coming from someone that at points, I mean not all the time, but at many different times, I've really enjoyed playing Duel Links, and that's not always because of the format. Sometimes the format was bad and I was still having fun, but a lot of the times I have enjoyed playing Duel Links. It's just right now and for the last like 2 months, I think I posted that video like Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links is weird right now a month and a half ago. Pretty much this last month and a half, I've just had no desire to play the game. I mean, there's certainly times when I'm having like a winning streak and it's a lot of fun, but a lot of the times I just get on and I'm just miserable every single game. It just feels so horrible to play, and I don't know how we got to this point. I think it started with Kawaki-Miru. I don't think it's just because of Kawaki-Miru, but it seemed like once Konami introduced that deck into the game, well, once they introduced Diamond Core to the game, it really felt like the direction of Duel Links changed. You have almost no control decks. You have like the Dinosaur Paleozoic deck that's new, and that's kind of cool. It uses some interesting mechanics, but that deck, I mean, it's so bad to play against. Like, your opponent is playing a lot of inconsistent cards, but if they open like the Marilla, you just lose every time. If they open Survival Zen, you just lose every time. That's not very fun to play against, and it's not very fun to play, I'm assuming. It's just another situation of, yeah, the deck's different, but is it that different from like the past decks? Does it give you that many more decisions? I don't really think it does, and it's just another deck on the pile of decks that Konami adds to the game that isn't fun to play against, isn't skillful to play, just a very interesting, awful situation. Anyway though, I think I've probably rambled on enough. I just need to get this off my chest, so if you guys notice I'm posting less and less Duel Links content, you don't get too worried and wonder what happened. This is a video that I want you guys to sort of know this is where I'm standing right now. It's not that Duel Links doesn't have fun decks. Even outside of Vampires, there certainly are creative decks out there. They're just not the most prominent decks. I actually think that the Curry strategy is pretty fun. That one has some cool interactions that we don't really see, and I wish that deck was more popular because it's actually pretty cool. Probably just a little bit too expensive for most people to play competitively, but overall, I still think Duel Links is really fun casually. It's just as I play more and more competitively, it gets worse and worse. I never really thought that I'd be in this position. I mean, I survived so many awful Duel Links formats, and I thought that those were like behind us now, but at the moment, it just seems like there's way too many things for Konami to hit on the ban list. If we think of like the last ban list where they hit Spellbook of Fate sort of randomly, if that's any indication of how fast or how slow Konami will hit things like Kawaki-Mirus and Vampires and even things like Ancient Gears, if that's an indication, I think we're in for a very long couple of months here where those decks are just completely dominant. I don't know if Konami will axe a whole bunch of top decks at one time. I pretty much know that they won't do that. I would be very surprised if they did. It'd be cool and it'd probably fix a lot of the issues with this game, but still, the game is just not in a good place for me personally right now. So if you enjoy it, perfectly fine. I'm just not having that much fun, so I'm going to sort of dial back from the Duel Links content, which I'm sure many of you are excited about, but a lot of people don't even seem to realize. I mean, every time I go on stream, I get at least one person asking completely like non-ironically, they're saying like, well, do you play the TCG at all? And that's kind of funny to me because I'm so like, I'm mostly a TCG player. Like 90% of my time spent playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Is focused on the TCG, but I get people that only come out to the streams, only watch the Duel Links content, they get kind of confused. But I think I'm just going to take a little break from Duel Links. I really wanted to get 10 King of Games in a row. I managed to get 7 in a row, but I just sort of lost my drive to do that. I'm sure I'll play it more when the format gets better, but right now it's just not fun for me. I'm not really interested in playing against Kawaki-Miru and Ancient Gears and the Dinosaur Paleozoic deck every single game in a row. Just not that fun. But anyway, hope that you guys enjoyed hearing my experiences and my opinion on Duel Links. I'm sure I'll get mixed responses from this video. I just want to be honest with you guys about what's going on with Duel Links and me right now. So sort of expect going forward just mostly, almost entirely TCG content. I'll see you guys later though. Thanks so much for watching today's video. Goodbye.